Okay, great. Fantastic. Is it 7:30? Yep, 7:30. Thank you very much, everybody. Mr. Ryan reminded me that the Jets are playing tonight, so without further ado, we'll get right to it. Real quick on the housekeeping, open public meeting statement. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the School Districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board Administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, the Chatham Township, Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP. Patricia, would you mind taking attendance? Could you turn on Patricia's mic? Or I could just yell it out.
Are we good?
Oh,
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
All good.
Ms. Ciccarelli, Ms. Clark, Mr. Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Smith. Dr. Zhang. Ms. Weber.
Here. Excellent. Just the Fab Five. I want to know what the other four are doing that we were not invited to. Very good. So if you're able to, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. It is on my right, your left. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Whoops. Sorry, folks. We're just getting used to the new sound, so bear with us a little bit. I do not have a opening comment, so we're going to send it right over to Dr. LaSousa, where I know there's an annual testing report that might take a few minutes. So, Mike, I'm going to send that right over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Weber, and happy birthday. No, it's your birthday today.
Thank you. What better way to spend it than here with you folks?
Nothing better. Just a reminder. Going to Chatham High School and seeing the production. Also, congratulations, just earlier today, a couple of hours ago, our girls soccer team was victorious in the sectional final, and they are advancing, and we'll host someone here on Thursday, but they had a really incredible performance. So kudos to them. And then, like you said, Ms. Weber, we are required to do our annual testing presentation on standardized test results at
standardized assessments. Our popular question that we get all the time is, do we have to do this? And the answer is yes, we do. We are required to administer assessments that are aligned to our standards. As you know, we follow the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Those standards follow us from kindergarten through 12th grade in all content areas. New Jersey has administered statewide assessments since 1978. We've had a little bit of a history. People going way back may remember NJ Ask, which then moved into Park, which then moved into NJSLA. Our students first took New Jersey Student Learning Assessments for the first time in 2019. And due to the pandemic, we halted testing, the state did, in 2020 and in 2021, and we resumed in the spring of 2022. So when our students take the NJSLA in English language arts in grades 3 to 9, there's 2 units. Students in grades 3 to 8, there's 3 units for math in grade 8, and then there are end of course assessments in both Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and then in geometry. And there are 3 tested grade levels for science, and that is 5, 8, and 11. Before we dive into the results, I do like to make a note that when you look at the number of units that our students take, it does shine a light on the fact that standardized tests do just capture one snapshot of our students. These are basically 2 units or 3 new units that we administer in the spring as compared to what we learned about them and their learning abilities over the course of an entire year. So it truly is just a snapshot. So for English language arts, we're looking to see if they have proficiency with their grade level skills and concepts that are critical to their college and career readiness. On each of the assessments, they are given tasks both with fiction and nonfiction tests. And the tests also include multimedia sources such as video and audio. And across the board in grades 3 to 8, the focus is on close reading, synthesizing ideas across text, determining the meaning of words and phrases in context, and then of course writing effectively when using or analyzing sources. Another note before we look at the results is that for each of the units for ELA, there is a writing task. And this is worth noting because typically the way that we approach writing is that it's a process, and we help the students see the value in pre-writing, plotting their ideas, going back, editing, and revising. But NJSLA really is an on-demand assessment, and so the students have to write about the tasks that they're given, and they need to move at an aggressive pace. So it's not typical of how we approach writing in the classroom. On math, similarly, we're looking to assess their skills and the concepts that we know that are critical for college and career readiness. Each assessment is comprised of objective measures assessing content and practice. There are constructed responses, there are multiple choice answers, and in addition to testing the major and supporting content, the NJSLA assessments for mathematics do incorporate reasoning and mathematical modeling. Just as of note, the performance levels have not changed. We receive levels level 1 to 5. 4 is meeting expectations, 5 is exceeding, 3 is approaching, 2 is partially met the expectations, and level 1 is did not meet the expectations for the grade level. So for the purposes of trying to expedite this, this year I did put both ELA and math for each grade on a slide. So when we look at our students in grade 3, we like to notice that this is the first time that these students at that grade are taking a standardized assessment, so we really do look upon this as a baseline. When our students are in the classroom, whether they're in 3rd grade or 9th grade, we encourage them to ask questions, use their teachers as resources. So for our students in grade 3, this is the first time that they really have to function completely independently, because when they're taking NJSLA, they're not really able to ask teachers questions. So knowing that this is a new experience for them, as you can see from the slide, our students performed incredibly well, with 76% of them meeting or exceeding grade level expectations in the area of ELA, and 84.2% of our students meeting or exceeding expectations in mathematics. For the purposes of this presentation, we highlight the performance of our students versus those across the state. Of the 255 students who were assessed in grade 4, you can see they performed very strong. In ELA, almost 81% met or exceeded expectation, and in math, almost 85% met or exceeded expectation. And in both subject areas, our students significantly surpassed the results of the state. Moving on to grade 5, our students continue to demonstrate a high rate of proficiency in ELA, with almost 82% meeting or exceeding expectation, and over 77% doing the same in math. That translates to almost 29% outperformance in ELA and over 37% in mathematics. In grade 6, more than 72% of our students met or exceeded expectation in English language arts, as compared to 49% of students versus the state. In math, nearly 68% of sixth graders met or exceeded expectations versus the state, who had 34.3% meeting or exceeding expectations. Moving on to grade 7, you'll see that 77% of Chatham students were proficient or beyond in English language arts. On the 7th grade math assessment, more than 74% of our students met or exceeded expectations based on NJSLS. And again, in both categories, outperforming the state by a significant amount. This slide highlights the fact that nearly 74% of 8th graders met or exceeded expectations in English language arts. I'm going to finish with the ELA results before continuing on to math, as once our students are in 8th grade, they do take a variety of assessments. So 9th grade is the last year that our students take NJSLA for English language arts. They do take GEPA in 11th grade, but that is considered a different assessment. So as you can see, 71% of our 291 ninth graders met or exceeded expectations, as compared to 52% for the state. So this final slide for English language arts just shows a totality of how our students perform. In grades 3 to 9, it's an average of the tested grades. So you can see that just over 76% of our students meet or exceed the expectations that are put forth by the state per the standards, as compared to 51.2% of students in the state of New Jersey. So as I mentioned, the math slide for 8th grade is a little challenging to represent, because in 8th grade, as you see, we do have students who are being assessed on three separate tests. And the similar is for the high school. So at Chatham Middle School in grade 8, 23.6% of our students took the grade 8 NJSLS. 70.5 took geometry, and 5.8 took algebra 1. At CHS, as you can see, 22.4% of tested students took the geometry assessment, 71.7% of our tested students took algebra 1, and 5.7 of tested students took algebra 2. So looking at the assessments, results rather, on the grade 8 NJSLS assessment, 18.2% of students met or exceeded the expectations, In geometry, 50.7 of Chatham students met or exceeded the expectations. On the Algebra 1 assessment, almost 80% of Chatham students met or exceeded expectations. And finally, in Algebra 2, 94% of our students who tested met or exceeded the expectations. So similar to what we did for our ELA testing, we took the average of all of the tested math that our students are taking from grade 8 straight through Algebra 2. And what the results showed is that 70.2% of our students are meeting or exceeding expectations. And you can see the comparison to the state of New Jersey. One of our requirements when we report out on this, on the NJSLA results is the state does require us to prepare a subgroup overview. And this slide highlights our subgroup data for the spring results of 2023. Similarly to the previous slide, this is an overview of our subgroup data for mathematics in grades from grade 3 math straight through to the high school, going through Algebra 2. If it is categorized as NA, it was an insignificant amount in terms of the percentage, and it does not get reported out on. Moving on to NJSLA Science. Similar to math and English Language Arts, the science assessment is based on the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which are of course generated from the next generation of science standards. The assessment consists of both multiple choice questions as well as constructed responses. And you will recall from the beginning of the presentation that this assessment is only administered to students in grades 5, 8, and 11. And each of those tested grades have 4 units for the testing window. This data is shown again as an aggregate. In grade 5, we had 58.5% meeting or exceeding expectation for a 31% difference between Chatham and the state. In grade 8, we had 43.6 meeting or exceeding expectation, with a 25% difference between our performance and that of the state. And concluding in grade 11 with 67% of our students meeting or exceeding the state standards versus the state, which came in at 29.8%. And once again, the subgroup overview in the same categories for the tested grades in science, Science 5, 8, and 11. One of the reports that we need to give data on per the state is our access for multilingual learners. So the access for multilingual learners is a series of language proficiency assessments, and it's given to anyone who receives English as a second language service. There's 4 specific tests that are given, and they're in the categories of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And the proficiency levels range from level 1, which is entering, to a level 6, which is reaching. And the stipulation for the program is it's recommended that students remain in the ESL program until they achieve an overall score of 4.5 or higher. When we administered the access back in the spring, there were 29 students who were given the assessment. And this is the results for the total of the 29 students. As you can see, the majority of our multilingual learners are in the emerging and developing categories. The data that we get from the access does give us critical information to help us plan and prepare to meet their needs across the grades when they come to us. Another test that we are required to report out on at this time is the GEPA, which is the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment. The GEPA consists both of an ELA and a mathematics component, and it is administered to students in grade 11 as a means of meeting the state graduation requirement. You can see our results for English Language Arts with 96.2% of our students passing in ELA and 88.2% that are passing. Students who do not pass the GEPA have alternate pathways that they can pursue to reach, to meet the graduation requirement. Our final assessment that we're reporting out on tonight is the DLM, which is the Dynamic Learning Maps. The DLM is an alternate assessment for students who have significant cognitive disabilities. There are 4 achievement levels for the DLM. As you can see, they are emerging, approaching the target, at target, and advanced. And you can see on this slide the number of students who participated in the administration of this assessment. And these are the results for the DLM in terms of our students who took the assessment and how they performed. So what does all of this mean? So when we look at all of the data that we have compiled from these assessments, we really do use this opportunity to engage collaboratively and look at the data and see how we compare. We try and look for trends. We try and look for standards that perhaps there's a specific pattern. We look at our scope and sequence and see if anything needs to be adjusted. And then based on what we are able to tell from the data, we try and bring that into the classroom, inform teachers about specific differentiation that might need to occur. At this moment, as we're looking towards the reconfiguration, we're working together to see if any adjustments need to be made as we prepare to move our students, with 5th grade entering the middle school, 3rd grade going to Lafayette. We also use this to look and see if we need to rework any professional development opportunities. Our goal is to provide professional development that not only reflects the needs of our students, but also incorporates teacher choice. That has been a big push for us this year so far. Some things that we have going in terms of professional development for the Chatham faculty and staff is we've established a cohort of Orton Gillingham, which started this past fall. We have a partnership with Raritan Valley Community College for their Science Education Institute, by which we send teachers out and they come back and lead professional development for our teachers. And we just sent a group down to the Association for Middle Level Education National Conference, which is geared towards middle school, and we had a team of 5 that went down to help bring back some important information that we think will give some guidance as we move towards the reconfiguration. And equally as important to the data that we presented tonight, we do stand by the fact that benchmarking our formative assessments are critical to getting to know our students and what their needs are, and also the role that we have in terms of observing teachers and helping them to perfect their practices and make instructional decisions that do support the growth of our students. And finally, what we're committed to is continuing to build support systems. So across the district, we have 2 behaviorists. We have 3 mental health clinicians for Tier 3 mental health services and family support. We have 3 multisensory and special education trained interventionists in each of the K-3 buildings. And we have Orton and Wilson programs to train teachers located within the district to support the literacy needs of our students. Some of the instructional programs that we have in place to support all of our learners across grade levels and across content. We have a BSI program from grades K all the way up through 8. We do run a brain camp, which is specific to helping students continue their growth in literacy. We are in our we have implemented foundations in grades K to 2. As you may recall, we have had foundations in kindergarten and first grade. It's rolled into second grade for this year to support foundational literacy skills. We're in the second year of implementation for Big Ideas for K to 5. To support our multilingual learners, we have brought in Lexia English. We have adopted new courses to reflect instructional trends as well as student interest. Stagecraft has come into Chatham Middle School. Cybersecurity is an example of a new class at CHS, as well as Physics 2A, which is at Chatham High School. And this year, we're also proud to have the support of Chatham Education Foundation to bring in a residency to support our students who are in orchestra at both Lafayette and Chatham High School. And thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Donahue. I think it's worth repeating what you said at the very beginning in case folks missed it, that it's important to note that this is a point in time. It's a snapshot. That doesn't mean that kids that, need support can't excel the following year, and the kids that excelled won't need support potentially the following year. So, standardized testings have some value, but the teachers do the assessment day in and day out. So if a kid needs support, they're getting it right in the classroom that day, not waiting for a standardized test. And if a student is so advanced, there's some differentiation within the classroom. So, I know that you have to do the standardized testing, and there are some benefits. Then you can use it as a tool to tweak curriculum. But from a student point of view, they're getting assessed every day by their teachers. I did want to ask about the geometry. Excuse me, grade 8 and geometry. Those are the two that were closest to about right even with the state, didn't exceed the state. Now, given that data, do you then go back and look at it, and see what can be tweaked? And is that a pattern? I don't recall what last year or 2019 was, quite frankly. So it was more the math that I just had, what do you do with it now?
So to answer your first question, it's comparable to where we were last year, particularly with grade 8.
Okay.
In regards to geometry, as you will remember, we did tweak the sequence in terms of offering geometry in grade 8. So I do think in looking at the data, that is an area where we're concentrating to see, is it a matter of the scope and sequence? What is it? When you get the report from NJSLA, they list all of the questions from most challenging to easiest, and the way that we receive the data, it's on a grid, so you can see Chatham versus the state.
Okay.
And the only information that we get as you go down to the bottom is it shows the standard. It never gives us examples of exactly what it is the students may be struggling on or where the pattern is. So what we have to do is cull through and find the standard by which perhaps there's a trend that many students are not performing, and then see where does that come about in the year, and things that may be odd, like the month of November is a roller coaster of a year. So I do think we are still adjusting to the sequence for geometry, but we are looking at it closely to hopefully bring those scores up. And show progress from year to year. But I would say, going back to your first question about Math 8, the results that were shown this past year are in line with where they have been previously.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have any question? Michael?
Can you hear me? I have a question about the science. So you mentioned that the students are tested in 5, 8, and 11.
Yes.
First question is, why is it only 5, 8, and 11? And it looks like, and I don't have the presentation in front of me, I'll look at it again, but from my notes, it seems like a higher percentage of our students meet or exceed expectations in math and ELA than they do in science, particularly in the lower grades. So what is it about that test that's causing that, do you think?
That's a great question. So NJSLA is a relatively new test. So as I pointed out, 2019 was the first year that we took it. 2019 was the field test for science. And all of this goes back to the shift that we experienced in science with the adoption of the next generation science standards. So science used to live in the realm where Chatham was ahead of the curve for a long time in terms of once they hit middle school, they were exposed to all of the sciences within 1 year. There was long ago where 1 year was dedicated towards physical science, one was dedicated for earth science. So the next generation science standards forced everyone to, within 1 year, you had to touch on all of that. So the other thing that they did, I'm trying to explain. So the next generation science standards force teachers to have students examine phenomenon. So it's very inquiry based. So they will start and show perhaps, a picture of weather patterns, and they make the students brainstorm of like, what do you think is happening? And then they have to come back in and apply their knowledge. So it's very hands-on. So in terms of the test, Mike, it's very hard, in my opinion, and I think the results show that, and why it's only administered 5, 8, and 11, is you want the students to have exposure to physical science, earth and space science, and the life sciences, and get used to that phenomenon-seeking approach. And the way many educators feel is it doesn't translate very well to a test. So they do have multiple choice where it's more base level rote memorization, but then they have to do a lot of explaining their thinking, which has presented itself to be challenging. So 2 things are my takeaways, is that they haven't perfected the test. It's hard to encompass that level of skill, and it's still very, in my opinion, and I think most educators would agree, it's still a learning curve for the teachers in terms of how do you teach that. It's very hands-on in a lot of what the students are doing in science classes. It's rubric based. Are they showing perseverance? Are they showing that they can really dig deep with the concepts? And
I have a different answer. The test is garbage. The test has no utility whatsoever. There's no relationship between the test and what kids know and can do. You have in 8th grade, 18% of kids in the state of New Jersey meeting expectations on the test. It's a nonsensical instrument that we force on kids to make them feel not smart. And if you look at every other data point, like how they perform on the ACT, or how they perform on AP tests, or how they perform on the SAT, there's no relationship between this concocted instrument from Pearson and what kids actually know and can do and have learned when they're tested in other ways. So it's really unfortunate. For 15 years now, we've been doing the shenanigans of giving kids some type of science assessment at the high school because the legislature passed a law saying that kids needed to have a science test before they graduated. There's never been a passing score for the science test. Kids just have to sit, literally. Had been biology for a very long time. Just sit and take the test. Didn't matter if they got a 0, as long as they completed 1 bubble, then it meant that they sat for the test. So it's just nonsense, and it's unfortunate that we subject kids to nonsense, but that's what the state of New Jersey makes us all do. And to me, science is the most glaring example of that.
To 67% of our students are at or meeting expectation.
Well, but that, Mike, is because there's no relationship between the grade 5, grade 8, and grade 11 tests.
Right.
They're just completely different tests, which is similar to the GEPA and similar to the SLA. It's unfortunate.
Okay.
you had mentioned that there's other avenues that high schoolers could pursue if they don't pass. What percentage of students are not passing that test out of curiosity, and what are the other avenues that can be 25? Okay.
So, just because you don't have the presentation
I don't have it in front of me,
it's okay.
sorry.
So 96.2% of our students passed an ELA.
Okay.
And then for math, it was 88.2. So the second pathway, they can use their PSAT, SAT, ACT scores. And then the third pathway is they could do a portfolio-based compilation that's approved by the DOE.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Dr. LaSousa, is this test is garbage a technical term? Is that an educational jargon? I've heard your take on standardized testing before, so it amused me. Any other questions for Dr. Donahue?
But this is particularly egregious. I can't resist myself, Ms. Weber.
Clearly.
When you're a teacher who cares about children and you give an assessment and there's a high degree of frustration in the class, or 80% of your students in a place in your classroom, are confused by the assessment, you re-examine what you're doing, because if 80% of the kids are confused, that doesn't mean that 80% of the kids are guilty of not doing their job. It means that there was a disconnect someplace. Maybe you didn't do what you were supposed to do as a teacher. Maybe the materials weren't the proper ones, whatever. When the state of New Jersey is administering an assessment over the last number of years in science, and the majority of kids are not performing, even when 18% of students are doing poorly, that is a reflection on the assessment, especially when those same kids, in some cases, like in our community, we can speak directly to our community, do really well. If a high number of them are passing other forms of assessment and going on to graduate high school, and 90% of them are enrolling in college, and many of them are going on to pursue degrees in science, there's a problem with the test. And it's not right to make kids feel small year in, year out, and sit them down to take a standardized test for an hour of their school day when they could be learning, and instead they're wasting their time feeling frustrated.
And how does
It's outrageous.
And how does that trickle down to the Department of Education, where they change it? I mean, this has been since 2019.
They blame they blame ESSA or the federal requirements, and it's just an ongoing source of frustration for some of us.
Okay, understood.
Sorry.
No. It's good information to have. Everybody else good? Okay, very good. Back to you, Dr. LaSousa.
I don't have anything else to report other than the fact that we did receive confirmation about our ROD grants since our last meeting, and that confirmation did confirm that the state did not award any grants in the area of security, but they did award grants in the area of infrastructure, primarily roof replacements and HVAC replacements. So Patricia, who's sitting in for Peter, is going to detail that a little bit further, but it's just to say it's good news that we're getting a reimbursement amount and a commitment from the state regarding all the projects that we put in for that qualified, but it was confirmation that not everything that we would like to fund or get a reimbursement on was awarded. So,
And that was across the street. That wasn't just in this
Yes.
district. Okay. Great, thank you. And thank you, Patricia and the business department, for putting in all the grants. And you have to have the money on hand in order to even apply for the grant. So I know that's a ton of work and a heavy lift for your team. Thank you. All right. That's it?
that's it.
Very good. Any additional questions for Dr. LaSousa or Dr. Donahue on anything? Nope. Nope. Okay, great. Patricia, you're sitting in for Peter. Would you mind giving us a construction update?
The construction will begin for the wall at Washington that was damaged by the car back in May within the next 2 to 3 weeks between the raining Saturdays and the contractors' others' prior obligations. They haven't started just yet. And I have also the same information that Mike reported about we have the preliminary estimated cost letters for the ROD grants that reflect roofing and HVAC.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, great. Any questions for Patricia? No? Bradley, you good? Okay, excellent. Very good. Oh, there we go. The bell of the ball, right?
Not much to report since last meeting. Academically, we had the mid-semester mark on November 1st, so senior snapshots went out for those applying to colleges. Most fall teams have concluded their season. We had a couple county champs, girls soccer, field hockey, and boys cross country. Dr. Luciso stole my thunder, and the girls team did win their section today for soccer. And also the play Macbeth will be on November 16th, 17th, and 18th. You can purchase tickets on the CHS Performing Arts website. There's also a senior citizen dinner, which is free. Registration closes tomorrow. Senior citizens do not need a ticket, but they do need to RSVP for the dinner. If senior citizens wish to attend on Friday or Saturday, they can use the code FREESC at checkout.
Great, thank you, Riley, and thank you for that plug. Registration is a little bit low for this senior citizen, so again, that play is Thursday night. So if you can, just let them know that you're going to show up for the dinner. If you're just showing up for the play and leaving, you don't need tickets, but they do like to get a head count for the dinner, and this is all free to seniors. And I just lost the time on that. I think, oh, it's at 4 o'clock. I'm sorry, the Thursday senior citizen show. And it's not exclusively senior citizens. You can buy tickets for that show as well. It's just general admission versus selecting your exact seat. So if everybody can get the word out to some of their friends and neighbors particularly about that Thursday show. Great, thank you, Riley. Moving over to committee reports, Ms. Ciccarelli is not in attendance. We did have a personnel meeting, and we did cover a few of the contracts where they're up to and the status of those. While the teacher's contract was settled, we're still working through some finer points on a couple of the other maintainers' contracts, the supervisors' contracts, so those are moving along nicely. I think that was the bulk of what we talked about, right, Beth? Those are the key points in any event. And curriculum, Ms. Ross?
Curriculum Committee met on November 1st, and we touched upon a few topics, including that communication went out to all middle school parents with the rolling out of the sexual health lessons. It was a seamless process, pretty much unchanged from last year, and out of the population of all 3 grades, we only had 1 family opt out. On the reconfiguration, supervisors are conducting site visits to schools that currently house grades 5 to 8 in one middle school building, and those include Butler, Paramus, Scotch Plains, and Mendham. So these visits are giving the supervisors an opportunity to ask questions and see how scheduling works for these other schools. And data taken from these visits will go back to the Strategic Planning Committee, which, if you remember, includes faculty from both the middle school and Lafayette, so that will help shape our plans here. October 9th was a professional development day for our staff, and as Dr. Donahue mentioned, some of the training programs were based on a survey that the teachers took at the end of last year to see where their interests lie, and the 2 topics that were favorites were in AI and also in managing student emotions. And then the committee also went through the test results that Dr. Donahue presented today for NJSLA. And that's it.
Great, fantastic, thank you, Susan. Does anybody have any questions for Susan or Dr. Donahue on any of those items? Nope, okay, very good. Mr. Smith, over to you for finance and facilities.
Finance and Facilities has not met since the last meeting. Our next meeting is November 15th.
November 15th. And Mr. Ryan, over to you for policy and planning.
Policy and planning has not met since the last meeting, and the next meeting is on the 15th.
15th, okay,
Yeah.
great. Fantastic, thank you. Do we have any liaison reports? Go ahead, Susan.
Chatham Education Foundation. As many of you know, their annual CFE Trivia Night was this past weekend, and it was a tremendous success. And they raised funds that will allow them to continue to support all 6 schools in the district. Their grant committee is reviewing applications, and we will hear about that in the new year. That's it.
Great, thank you, Susan. And the other performing arts one was the report that Riley gave about the play Macbeth that's coming up in November. Perfect. Anything else anybody needs to report from the Fab Five? No? Okay, perfect. Then I would like to make a motion to move the minutes of October 16th, public and executive session. And Michelle was the only one not at that meeting, so all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? You good, Patricia?
We're good.
Very good, thank you. Okay, great. So we have our first opportunity for public commentary. Sorry about the mic. Hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. And again, just as a reminder, if we can answer or address anything, we'll do it at the end. I'll take notes and we'll give you answers at the end, but the floor is yours and we won't be interrupting or back and forth. If you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Excuse me, Libby Hilsenrath, Chatham Borough. Couple of comments just from tonight. The performance of our students, I think it's worth noting that I would say nearly 90 or 99% of the parents in Chatham pay for ACT classes and extra tutoring for their kids. So it's really not all about what the school provides. That's number one. Number two, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I can't help myself. As the head of curriculum, Dr. Donahue, I think you should know that grammatically, the words are not try and, but try to. Okay, so that troubles me about what we're teaching our kids, because that's the grammar is just wrong. But my primary question tonight was going to be, it's item 8, section B on the agenda, which is the vote to approve the feeding evaluation and training services from Heidi Miller at $400 per evaluation and $190 per hour for training. I'd like to know who these students are. Who are we going to be training? What is the purpose of this? How many students are there? What's the percentage? And will this take away from classroom instruction? And once that's answered, I'll have further comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Good evening to all. Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. I'm first going to put on my JC hat and announce that our tree sale is getting underway the day after Thanksgiving, which is a few short weeks from now. It's a community event. We will have the help of the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Key Club, and every dollar we raise, or almost every dollar we raise, goes back into Chatham. This is the only place where you can buy a tree and get your money back. We gave out, I should say, roughly $10,000 to graduating seniors in the form of college scholarships this past June. And so I hope that everybody can come out and patronize the sale. We'll be out with delivery options and also online options pretty shortly. Okay. Something more serious. This is Saturday's Wall Street Journal, and I am sure you're all aware by now that the school district of Westfield made the front page of the Journal, and not in a good way. Evidently, some young men decided to take some publicly available photos of their female classmates and Photoshop them into a state of undress. This kind of thing has always been doable, but with newer tools, it's now orders of magnitude easier to do. We all saw this coming a mile away. We shouldn't be surprised, but somehow it's still shocking. Every time I think social media can get any worse, it does. I guess the good news is we should be thankful that it didn't happen here first. I don't think you need to waste a lot of time on this. No policy meetings, no committee meetings. A simple statement would do. Anybody getting caught doing something stupid like this gets expelled. No second chances, no counseling, no get out of jail free cards. This was a violation of these women's privacy, their dignity, and it was certainly a violation of basic human decency. So anybody caught doing this can do their penance and reform themselves in another district. So I hope you will consider this and not waste. We don't have a lot of resources to waste a lot of time on this. Just make a real definitive statement on it, and that's that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Bill. Any additional public comments? No? There's another opportunity at the end. So if you just bear with us, we'll go through the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. So Libby, you had a question about item B8 on a student, on the training. Dr. LaSousa, do you want to address that?
I'll kick it over to Dr. Sortino.
Oh, sorry. I should have known that one.
So feeding evaluations would be to ensure that a child doesn't choke on their snack or lunch that they're eating. That's less than 5 students district-wide that have significant concerns eating and drinking fluids, any of the materials that they need to function on a daily basis. So feeding out evaluation at the cost of $400 for less than 5 students, as well as training at $190 per hour, would, number one, ensure the safety and well-being of students with IEPs to function and be alive in a school setting. And number two, they're required by state and federal law. So state administrative code and federal law, IDEA. Additionally, if you look at the last page, there's a student going out of district at a significant cost. So I also look at it as we're paying a cost to also ensure that a student remains in district at a lower cost in their least restrictive environment, and they remain safe every day.
Great, thank you, Dr. Sortino. And Mr. Heap, thank you for the Christmas tree sale. Oh, did he leave? Oh, wow, you moved, Bill. Sorry, thank you. So thank you for the Christmas tree sale announcement. I can't believe you're letting them go online. I thought you were going old school till you died, but hey, onward and upward with progress. And regarding student discipline, I'm going to let Dr. LaSousa handle that, but you know, you could always, and the discipline is totally up to the administration. Even if you suspend or expel a kid, we are still legally obligated to educate them. Even if we have to pay another district to take on that burden, which they're unlikely to do that. But again, the discipline is up to the administration. But again, we're legally obligated. If they live in town, we're obligated to educate them. Mike?
Well, I'm not going to make any specific comments about what happened in another district when I don't know all the details or all the facts, but obviously I've read what others have read, and of course we would be incredibly upset if we had an instance where students were creating imagery of other students in ways that were offensive or illegal even. We try to educate students. As many of you know, we have a course right here in the middle school about online activity and how that can be a lasting, enduring legacy, even if you're only a kid playing around on social media. Any instance of bullying or harassment or inappropriate conduct on social media is something that we are obligated to investigate and then to punish if there is a violation of school policy. The Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights requires school districts to be responsible for conduct, including on social media, that takes place outside of school hours and outside of school grounds. It's an unfunded mandate, and it's the reason why we have anti-bullying specialists in every school, as we're required to by law. And there is no such thing as expelling a student. There's finding an alternative placement for a student, but that means finding a school district or a private school for students with disabilities that is willing to accept a student at cost, and that we've been down that road for other issues before, is much, much, much easier said than done, and is much, much, much more expensive than educating them here. So of course, if a student were to violate another student's rights, we would deal with that, and we would be extremely proactive and and we would mean business if the more serious the violation, but just clicking our fingers and acting as though we can expel students is not something that's realistic.
Understood.
All students have rights.
Yes, understood. Very good. Any additional comments or questions from anybody? No? Okay, great. So we're just going to go through the agenda quickly, and then there's another opportunity for public comment at the end. So if you would just bear with us. You know what, Ms. Ciccarelli's not here, so I'm going to move personnel in her absence. So for personnel, I'd like to move items A1 through 21 on the regular agenda, and then on the addendum, there's items 3, 13, and 18.
Second? And
Michael seconded, Mr. Ryan seconded that.
In the back.
Patricia?
You got the back.
Oh, and there's a
These are
back.
good.
Oh, sorry.
19, 22,
Oh.
23, 24.
So Mike Ryan, take that back, so hang on. So 19, 22, 23, and 24 on the addendum as well. Sorry, I didn't realize there was a back.
Sorry.
Mr. Ryan, can you second it?
second that one.
Excellent, very good. It's a two-part seconder. Thank you. I apologize, I didn't see the back. Any questions for Beth on any of these items? Beth, are the addendums just late additions for coaching and other staffing? Yes. Okay. Again, just a reminder, the agendas are generally posted on Fridays afternoon, so we had the weekend to look at most of it. Sometimes there's late breaking items. Any questions for Beth on any of these regular or addendum items? No? Patricia, would you mind taking attendance?
Sure.
Or not attendance, roll call.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes,
Okay, agenda items pass 5-0.
great, thank you. Ms. Ross, over to you for curriculum.
Sure, I'd like to move.
We're gonna do-
Wait,
Oh,
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry.
Mr. Smith, we'll do finance then. I was trying to keep you guys awake. I've only been doing this for 12 years. You think I'd get A, B, C, D right in order every
I'd like to
time?
move agenda items B1 to B8 to a vote and highlight a donation from the Stanley Center honorarium of $300 to thank the students participating in the grand opening ceremony. So we love donations, thank you.
second it.
okay.
Any questions on any of the finance items for either Bradley or Patricia? No. Okay, all you, Patricia, thank you.
Agenda items B1 through 8, Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes,
Agenda items pass 5-0.
great. Now, Susan, over to you for curriculum.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move agenda items C1 to C3.
Second.
Excellent. Any questions on the curriculum item, particularly 3, since you can't really discuss 1 and 2? No? No additional questions? Okay, Patricia?
All right, agenda items C1 through 3, Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes,
Agenda items pass 5-0.
great, thank you. Mr. Ryan, any audibles for policy?
No, nothing to move for policy tonight.
Okay, just a quick question. Are we still on target, I guess, for like first quarter rollover, somewhere in the first quarter?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I'm finished with my analysis of all of it. So
Okay.
I'm waiting for the rest of the,
Nobody likes to show off. Mike said he's done with his stuff. Everybody else has to do theirs. Great, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Any board business that anybody would like to bring up? No? Okay, great. Dr. LaSousa, we do not have an executive session tonight, right? Okay, very good. Perfect. So we have our second opportunity for public commentary. Again, if you wouldn't mind, excuse me, just introducing yourself. Stand by, folks. Mr. Heap's coming around.
Bill Heap again. Just as, for general clarification, it is the case that if you have a registered address in town and are under 18, no matter how egregious the offense is, the school district has an obligation to educate you certainly short of anybody being thrown in jail or something awful like that. There is no recourse for the district in these cases.
Thanks, Bill. Any additional public comments?
Yeah, Libby Hills and Rath, Chatham Borough. I already wrote my name down once, but
That's
I
okay.
don't believe Mr. Heap did.
That's okay, great, thank you.
Okay. So I'm here to urge the public to vote no on question number 1 tomorrow on Election Day. At your last meeting, both Ms. Weber and Mr. Smith stated that the funding for school security was already in the budget. Quote, "They're fully funded, they're in the budget. We can fund these out of the base budget. We have $80 million, we have it in the budget," end quote. It was also stated by Ms. Weber, quote, "The goal is to build the vestibules and then use that money and reappropriate it. We're hoping to, I'm still quoting, we're hoping to use the security money in out years or subsequent years and take the $500,000 or $800,000 and reapply it to other programs," end quote. So now the interpretive statement that the voters will see tomorrow, on Tuesday, Election Day, is disingenuous at best and an out-and-out lie at worst, because you've said you will reappropriate the money and it won't be dedicated solely to security costs. And before you say it in your response, you did also state that security will be paid for and that choices will need to be made as to where to cut from the budget if this question number 1 doesn't pass. But the time to make those hard choices was in the spring when you were developing the budget and any second questions that would be put forth, not by deceiving the voters now and asking for a permanent tax increase for something as critical as school security. It's my opinion that you're counting on the fact that voters will go into the polls on Tuesday with little or to no knowledge of the facts and simply vote yes because they see the word school security, and that you will get your permanent tax increase to spend on, quote, other programs not related to school security, as you've stated. Perhaps you could have taken out the feeding specialist money from the budget, or not given the school administrators a 2.6% raise, according to Chatham Patch. Anyone who knows the facts surrounding this and has been listening to what you say knows that this is simply a way to skirt the 2% tax cap and tug on the heartstrings of the public to get a permanent tax increase to be used for whatever you want, and the voters will have no say in the matter, and nor will they know how the money is being spent. It's frankly dishonest and disgraceful that you would put up a second question for something as critical as school security and paraprofessionals. I would urge people to vote no on question 1 for a permanent tax increase. By your own admission, you have the money.
Thanks, Libby. Any other comments? Nope, great. Okay, so we're going to close the public commentary. And Bradley, before you jump in, Libby, thank you for bringing up, first, thank you for reminding folks to vote tomorrow. It's frustrating when only 30% of the people in town make the decision for everybody else, so it'd be great if everybody can go out and vote in general. Just vote yes, vote no, just vote. And the security questions, what we did say is that they're fully funded now, but they're crowding out. If you recall, Dr. Luce is saying they're crowding out other programs, and we've had to trim in other areas to pay for that. And now when we first started paying for security, it was around $250, $300, then it went up to $400. We're now up to north of $800,000 in annual expenses, which is crowding out other programs. So while it's in the budget and we think it's critical, and we're going to continue to pay for security, it's just at what expense? That's the line that folks don't say when they quote me. They don't say, but at what expense? And they're saying, well, tell us what expense so that we can make an informed decision. We've said time and time again, the only way in any business, right, to raise that kind of capital is headcount. What we can't tell you is it's going to be all AP programs, or it's going to be, 4 teachers at this school. We have said that it's most likely going to come from the high school level, because you can't have 30 kids in a second grade class trying to learn how to read. You can have 30 kids in a high school advanced placement class. Is that a burden for the teacher? Absolutely. Is it optimal? No. Is it ideal? No, it's not. I think the other point that is misleading is that you won't know where the money's going to if, we won't know if you're paying for it on security. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bradley or Mike, or I would have checked Peter. It must be spent on security. This second question cannot be spent on anything else. It has to be security related by statute. So there's no deceit there. It's going into security. But again, the second sentence that everybody has to say is, it's in the budget, but at what cost? What else are we not paying for? What are we crowding out? How many teachers are we going to have to maybe not replace if we have a few retire in order to keep spending the money on security? We've said that security is, our number one priority. We need our teachers to be safe, and we need our students to be safe. But Bradley, this is your area.
The only other thing I would say in response to the comment that you took out of context, Ms. Hilsenrath, what I specifically said at last meeting was that the money that is in the budget this year was in response to the dozens of parents that showed up at the September meeting asking for more security in the school. And what I said is, we have the money in the budget this year to pay for those security guards. We were talking about security guards.
Class 3 officers were in the budget. Clearly it was, you may have misunderstood what we were talking about because you didn't listen to the whole thing, but we said Class 3 officers were in the budget. We were not talking about man traps or anything like that in the budget. Class 3 officers were in the budget. And we had a whole discussion about how the Class 3 officers are hired by the borough, not by the school district. So you don't get to, you accuse us of cherry picking things all the time, right? But you don't get to do that yourself. Go back and watch the tape. It's officers that were in the budget, not all of our security needs.
Great, thank you. Dr. LaSousa?
Yeah, this is more for Mr. Heap. It's not students who are 18, up to the age of 18. It's any student who is eligible for school in Chatham. We have an obligation to educate. So that begins at the age of 3 for students who qualify at the age of 3. And the students who qualify are not ones that we go out and pick. They come to us via either their pediatrician's office or a service in New Jersey that determines they're eligible because of special needs that they have. We then, as soon as they hit the age of 3, are responsible for their educations. And that goes all the way up through the age of 20 for students who also are eligible or qualify via their IEPs. And this is all, I think Mr. Heap's comments they're interesting threads here, right? So his first comment was about Westfield. 2010, I became a central office administrator. I was sitting in Dr. Donahue's seat. There was no such thing as the HIB law in New Jersey. A year later, there was an HIB law in New Jersey. The HIB law now puts the responsibility on school districts to discipline matters that occur outside of the school day and outside of school grounds, i.e. on social media. Now we don't have a choice. If we are Westfield and something like that lands on our desk on a Sunday morning, we have to address it and take time and resources and money to do so. We have an interesting resolution for students who are unable to swallow. We could live in a fantasy world and think that we're not responsible for students. If they are eligible in Chatham via their IEP or otherwise, we are responsible for them. So we can send them out of district where they have a nurse at their side all day long, which we have to do for some students who are medically fragile, beginning at the age of 3, by the way. And those students cost typically north of $100,000 a year because of the services they require. Or we can find every way we can to enable those students to access their education closer to home, ideally in Chatham in their home school. But doing that also comes at a price. It comes at a price of paraprofessional support because we may need a paraprofessional by that child's side. It may come with special training that our staff needs to have. It may come from working with a speech school or a school for students who can't hear or who are deaf. It comes in all kinds of forms, but it's not the case that we can just say, well, that's really a headache for us. We don't want to deal with those students. We have a responsibility and an obligation, if not morally, at least legally, to take care of all of those students and ensure that they get an education until they become ineligible, which typically for some of these students isn't until the age of 21. So that's just the world that we live in, and that requires resources. And it's true. Living in a 2% tax levy cap world, when inflation is 5%, and we don't control and pick and choose which students come to us, and we don't pick and choose whether a kid uses AI to do something terrible, or we think we need more school security. These are all costs that we have to find a way to incorporate within our budget. And the Board of Education made the decision 5 months ago to maintain the budget within the statutory 2% cap, and then go to the voters and request more to try to accomplish more for the students that we serve. So it's interesting how a lot of these things are interrelated, but again, at the end of the day, we are responsible for all students who are eligible for an education who reside in Chatham.
Great, thank you, Mike. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? No? Susan, go ahead, sorry.
I just want to take a minute. I think at the last few of these meetings, we've really focused on the immediate needs in our district regarding security and mental health. But as the curriculum chair, I really can't let it go unsaid that, Chatham's public education is among the best in Morris County and in the state. And after 2 years on this board, I continue to be impressed by the work and the commitment that our teachers, our supervisors, and that Dr. LaSousa and Dr. Donahue have in putting our children first. And our board members, Jill, Brad, and Mike Ryan, who work tirelessly along with the Teachers Association to ensure that, they negotiated a contract that will keep our greatest asset, our teachers, in our schools. So all I can say to the community is tomorrow you have an opportunity to vote on 2 questions that, if they pass, will only make our schools stronger, providing, enhanced safety for everyone who works and goes to school here, and to provide benefits for paraprofessionals who really are a critical piece in every classroom they support. So if you go out and vote, do your best, do your part to make sure that our Chatham schools remain exceptional. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you, Susan. Any other comments? We're ready to go? All the doctors at the table, you're good? Patricia? Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out. Drive safely. It's much darker now than it was a few months ago, so be careful. Have a great night. We do not have an executive session. Any score, Michael, of the game?